I'm Susan Graham of Senior Edge Legal, and I want to talk to you today about marriage contracts. Who needs a marriage contract? Maybe you do. Getting married to someone is wonderful. It's one of the best days of your life. You're in love with someone and you really care about them, but it's also a business arrangement. Why do you care? Well, let me explain that to you. Idaho is a community property estate. That means there's a presumption that all of the property belongs to the two of you, no matter how it's titled. Now, that doesn't matter when you got married when you were young and neither one of you had any assets. But if this is a second marriage or later in life marriage, it's going to make a big difference. So community property belongs to the both of you. And we never care about any of that stuff until the marriage is over, when someone dies or you get divorced. And at that time, the community property gets split 50-50, and each of you walk away with your 1/2 if you're divorced, or if somebody's dead, the deceased person can say where that 1/2 goes. There's another kind of property that's owned by married people, and that's separate property. That's something you own before the marriage or received as a gift or inheritance to that individual during the term of the marriage. And what happens, again, when the marriage is over through death or divorce, the person who owned that separate property, if it's a divorce, they walk away with their own separate property. And if it's death, they get to decide where their separate property goes. But Idaho has a special law that makes this all a mess. Idaho says if you have separate property and you don't do anything different, you don't have a contract to straighten this out, all the earnings from separate property are community property. So let me give you an example. This is a bowl, a fish bowl, let's pretend, and it's got lots of white marbles. That's your separate property that you start out with. But then what happens is, as the marriage goes along, you have a dividend that goes into that brokerage account. And you have interest on a savings account that goes in there. You have rental income that comes from a rental that was a separate property item. You have a mortgage payment you make on the rental. The principal portion of that mortgage is going to be community property. So all these dark marbles start to accumulate in a separate property asset because you had no agreement, no contract to make it any different. And then when you take money out of your separate property savings account, are you taking out a dark marble or are you taking out a light marble? Nobody knows. And nobody cares until, again, the marriage is over through death and divorce. And then it becomes an issue as how much is community and how much is separate. So how do you solve that problem? It's necessary to enter into a marriage contract. It could be a pre-marriage contract, that's called a prenuptial agreement, or a post-marriage contract, a post-nuptial agreement. If you're going to do this, I strongly encourage you before you get married to enter into a contract. The reason I say that, and don't do it 2 weeks before because everybody's in a panic mode going forward with the marriage, because you want to be sure those issues are straightened out between the two of you. And if you can't straighten them out, and that's happened to a number of my clients, they can't reach an agreement, that's useful information. It may break your heart, but it's better to have that identified before the marriage rather than later on. So you can, in the marriage contract, say all of the separate property, including earnings from the separate property, and including any community property contributions to the separate property, stay all separate property. So we don't have the confusion in terms of do we have dark colored marbles or do we have white colored marbles in that particular asset. So who needs a marriage contract? It could be you.